5-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 6-year-olds, they're all, that's a lot of energy running around when you're stressed, I get it.
It is, but I didn't mean to kill them.
No,
I don't be said it.
When authorities in Flagstaff, Arizona responded to the call of an unresponsive child in a nearby apartment, they never expected the horror they were about to walk into.
Anthony Martinez and his partner starved their son to death and kept him and his brother in the closet.
Yeah, this is a second conviction.
A father in his mid-20s named Anthony Martinez had his mother call 911 after finding his 6-year-old son, Deshaun Martinez, in critical condition in one of their bedroom closets. He wasn't able to move or speak, he was extremely underweight, and it just looked like he had been through hell. His parents are telling the officers he was this skinny and unhealthy due to the young boy having a medical condition, on top of consuming diet and caffeine pills. Though their cover-up would quickly fall apart because his 7-year-old brother was also found in the same exact closet in very similar condition, but he was alive, just barely clinging on to life. Welcome back to the Dark Side of Life. Truthfully, there wasn't a lot of background information I could find on young Deshaun Martinez. We know that he was growing up with his parents, Anthony Martinez and Elizabeth Archibeque, in Flagstaff, Arizona. Anthony's mother, Ann Martinez, was also residing in the home with the family. In the beginning of 2020, Deshaun was 6 years old and he was one of 4 children. He had one older brother who was 7 years old and 2 younger sisters ages 4 and 2, none of whom have really been identified due to the sensitivity of this case and their ages. Once the boys were old enough to start attending school, Anthony and Elizabeth wouldn't end up enrolling them. For whatever reason, they decided against it and the boys were kept home, but they almost certainly were not homeschooled. Although there isn't a ton of information on Deshaun's early years, what we do know about his early stay in the hospital gives us some insight into the way he was struggling while growing up. His medical history tells us when Deshaun was just 2 weeks old, he was having a really hard time gaining weight after being admitted to the hospital for a UTI and sepsis. This led to the boy having extremely high fevers and vomiting every single time he would try to feed. Deshaun would remain in the hospital's care for approximately 10 days at the time as he slowly got better. And when he was discharged, Elizabeth and Anthony would actually be counseled on how to keep their child at a healthy weight moving forward. After this ordeal, Deshaun's weight would slowly creep back up, and by the time he was 4 years old, he was weighing around 34 pounds, which is slightly below average for a boy his age. However, by the following year, when Deshaun was just 5 years old, it had dropped back down to 27 pounds, putting him well below average and once again going in the wrong direction. His parents would say they were waiting for some food stamps to come through so they would be able to get Deshaun some more fatty foods for his weight. That just never happened. According to his parents, Deshaun was always fed a lot, but he always failed to gain weight, which is highly unlikely to be true, being Deshaun continued to lose weight until he was 6 years old and weighed under 20 pounds. At which point, he and his brother had become so desperate for food, they would wait until their parents fell asleep, and then once they were asleep, they would sneak out into the kitchen and find something to eat. In early 2020, during one of these nightly scavenges for anything to get into their stomachs, Deshaun and his older brother would end up getting caught by their parents, which was the launching pad to begin their brutality on the boys. They were made to pay for trying to eat something in the house without the permission of their parents or any adult in the home. I say any adult in the home because Ann Martinez was not an innocent bystander throughout this ordeal, and she was right there witnessing and participating in the cruel punishments. On March 2nd, 2020, Ann Martinez made the 911 call after Anthony found his son unresponsive in the bedroom closet of the apartment. When officers arrived on scene and made their way into where Deshaun was and took a look at him, they immediately knew this young boy was the victim of severe and he was not being fed properly. The paramedics that were on scene would do everything they could in order to revive the 6-year-old. There was just nothing they could do to bring him back. Deshaun weighed a deplorable 18 pounds when he finally passed away, roughly the same weight he was when he was 1 year old, and he was described by those who saw him as nothing but skin and bone. His ribs were protruding from his back, His skin looked like it had been stretched out over his bones, and his eyes were incredibly dark and sunken into his face with the rest of his facial features. I mean, his condition was gruesome. His hair was extremely brittle and falling out, while his brother was in the same exact state, weighing just 27 pounds at the age of 7. The only difference was he was barely alive. The brothers were found like this because their parents would rarely, if ever, feed them, and they would always lock them in a very small closet for extended periods of time. The closet the two young brothers were trapped in for 16 hours a day is far, far smaller than you are imagining right now, I promise. From wall to wall of the closet, it was 53 by 63 centimeters, which is approximately 21 by 25 inches, meaning they had absolutely no room between the two of them, and if one of them tried to sit down, they only had 2 feet in front of them to stretch their legs out, which was impossible. They also had no choice but to just use the bathroom while they were standing there in the closet because they were only let out certain times during the day. According to the reports, the adults involved were locking them in that closet for 16 hours a day as a tactic to stop them from stealing food in the future.
I mean, because it's clear that the way your kids are living, they're suffering. They're not eating. They're not getting the nutrition. They're literally dying slowly. I'm just making sure that what you guys weren't doing is prepping them to get there faster. When I'm looking at timelines of when you're feeding your kids, we're looking at our first breakfast is 11:30, and dinner is at 5:30 to 6. Right?
Yeah, we said we were eating late.
Let's call it 6:30, 7:30, 8:30, 9:30, 10:30, 11:30, 12:30, 1:30, 2:30, 3:30, 4:30, 5:30. 6:30 is 12 hours. 7:30, 8:30, 9:30, 10:30, 11:30. 17, they're going 17 hours without food between meals. 17 hours, that's a significant amount of time. I know that when you leave my kids alone hungry for a lot less time, they're getting into stuff and they're causing a little bit of a ruckus, right? Tell me about your kids doing that.
Go get food.
They'll go get food?
They'll leave the apartment but everything's low, so they can reach pretty much everything in the kitchen.
Tell me about how they get in trouble when they get stuff they shouldn't be.
What? They take it until if they need it already for dancing and shit. Because that's usually how long of it. The last thing was a whole loaf of bread.
So they're going in there and they're taking bread, and that's your guys' allotted food. I get that. All right, so we're taking food from them and putting them in timeouts and spankings. Is that my understanding? Mm-hmm. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Where are they going when they're going to their timeouts?
To their timeouts.
Mind you, all 3 of the adults that were living in the household confessed to partaking in the cruel behavior any time they saw the boys were trying to get food, and each and every single one of them was well aware there were 2 young boys on the brink of death in their closet, yet none of them had the heart to put it to an end, and they only condoned one another's actions.
I mean, was there ever a point when you see your son shrinking up, you're thinking, this needs to change, or he's gonna die?
You would said it out loud to Anthony. It's a dream for me. That's why he told me as soon as he gets some food stamps, like it's gonna be on a fucking pediatrician diet and taking him to Phoenix and all this other stuff. And it was all for nothing anyway.
I can tell you love your kids. You have a mother's heart. I get that. And I can tell it wasn't your goal to hurt your children. I get that.
I never wanted them hurt. Ever since they were born, I only wanted the best for them, and I was never able to give them that.
Has this been hard on Anthony? Not necessarily his diet, but just this last 6 months?
Yeah, I guess. He doesn't really show his feelings or anything, but I know he's a lot stronger than I am. He hasn't been in and out of facilities his whole life, and snake with belts his whole childhood. My parents dumped me a long time ago.
Seeing how this child was all locked up and stuff like that, do you think maybe Anthony did something?
No, he wouldn't do.
I mean, obviously these malnutritious, they're not getting food, but do you think he would have done something horrific to put him out of his misery or something like that? Like, I mean, is he capable of something like that?
He would never think that he was say him. He loves those kids just as much as I do.
So your other children are saying that those same diet pills are things that you would give to curb your children's appetite. Tell me about that. Deshaun said he thought it was candy.
Yeah, into it. He thought it was candy, but I've never given any of them.
Well, how come your 7-year-old and your 4-year-old are telling me differently?
I don't know, unless they're like, yeah.
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't give them pills unless they give them vitamins.
So you're saying you weren't given that to curb their appetite?
No, not at all.
Or to help with their appetite? Or as a supplement for their food? So they
I'll
weren't...
go under oath and say that I haven't, because I've never done it.
So we don't know why we're getting that information from your kids? Talking with Grandma, she was telling us a little bit of the history that, you know, she tried to feed the kids a little bit, and she was telling me that you guys have some fights about that. Can you tell me about that?
Football, feeding.
Mm-hmm. What were those fights about?
And then they were fighting about over was like sweets and stuff for. And she would try to give them birds and forks and try to just let them eat.
Try to give them what?
Birds or forks or whatever that they had already eaten.
Try to give them more food than their initial serving? How come that was a big deal to you?
Because they kept throwing up every.
It's stated during the final hours of Deshaun's life, his older brother was pretty aware just how severe his condition was, and he would try to save his life, but was ultimately unable to do so. Exactly what action he took to try saving him is unclear. It's just heartbreaking to know a 7-year-old in such rough shape was panicking and worried about his younger brother. His brother was described by detectives as being in a non-life-sustaining state of starvation at the time they were found. I mean, imagine being either one of these boys for just a minute. Deshaun had to fight to survive with his older brother until his body could just no longer take it anymore and finally gave up on him, unsure if his parents ever truly loved him. And his older brother was forced to sit there in the same closet in the same distress, but witnessing and listening to his younger brother die before his eyes. At such young ages too, it's unbelievable what some people will do to their own children.
Just two things that we're stuck on together here is both of your kids independently of each other, meaning they're going to be one-on-one just like I'm interviewing you, have both said that
They spoke to.
that there's discipline this morning. Okay. And I need to know about that. And the other thing is they're saying that these diet pills had been given, that you specifically had given them from a black little case, little black bag, like they're able to describe bags to them to curb appetites.
I don't know what they're thinking of, but.
Well, what are they thinking of? Because something, like kids don't, like I said, I've been doing this for a little bit.
She saw it to trigger out. All I did was give them their breakfast for their lunch. I don't know what they're talking about.
But that's when they say that he was really getting spanked. He was really getting disciplined. Two different kids.
I would have heard Deshaun cry. My friend was a case.
And then he was put in the closet.
Mom got in trouble like 2 days ago for that, but unless that's what they're thinking about, because Deshaun hasn't done anything.
So you don't think that there's any over I mean, this is the thing too, is I know that like when you're a super strong, healthy person, you can take a little more brute force than someone on that's feeble and neglected, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if your son's already feeble and he gets spanked or he gets pushed or dropped or something like that, and he gets hit and maybe loses consciousness, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm just trying to figure out the whys and the hows. You know what I mean? But I wasn't there. You were.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like if there was something where...
And I know that I didn't hit him or spank him or do anything. And I know that if Anthony did, I would have heard it because Deshaun would have started crying. And I could hear when they cried.
Do you think he may have spanked him hard enough to where something happened where he wasn't crying anymore? Like that's maybe when he died? And now this is like, oh my God, he just kind of seized up and he died. Because I don't want to get in trouble for spanking my kid too much. Like, do you think that's a possibility?
I don't.
Like, has he ever lost his cool when he's disciplined his kids?
I didn't realize how bad though I thought it was giving you.
Hmm?
I thought I was giving him an...
Lizzie, honestly, how can you look at me and tell me that? You know.
The girls have been gaining weight. They eat the same as the boys do.
I mean, you can look at your two boys, and you look at your girls, and you look at other 4-year-olds, and you look at other 6-year-olds, and they are obviously not the same. You know what I mean? And I know that you were done with Dr. whatever his name is from Mountain View just 6 months ago, and he didn't have the concerns that we're having right now today. What happened in 6 months? Something changed. I don't know. I mean, are you having problems dealing with this? With 4 kids? Are you having problems with the financial stuff? Like, what led you to the point?
Money, lack thereof, let's say.
Man, Lizzie, what led you to the point of saying, I'm not feeding my kids anymore?
You don't know. I honestly don't.
Following their discovery, the surviving children would immediately be removed by authorities from their home in Port Arthur. One thing that quickly caught the eye of those that were investigating this situation was the sisters' appearance and condition was in stark contrast to their older brothers. The sisters were well taken care of, they were well dressed, and they had clearly been eating on a much more regular basis, and it seemed they hadn't received any of the same treatment that Deshaun and his older brother had. Though that doesn't mean the sisters won't have issues from everything growing up, as they had no choice but to witness the things Deshaun went through until he finally passed away. Each one of them would be taken and placed in a foster home. The older brother took a little bit longer to get there because he was admitted to the hospital first on the brink of death. After making it there and getting settled in, he and his sisters would be adopted by a woman named Marcy Roof and given the ability to start a new life. At 37 pounds and a size 4, our mother and son bond began. His arms and legs were so tiny, the size of a broom handle. Were the words of Marcy Roof, who spoke during some of the court proceedings that followed, and she spoke about just how traumatized the children were after experiencing what they had. The older brother would ask Marcy every 5 minutes or so when the next meal was, even though he seemed to be terrified of eating the food or even drinking the water. It also took the young boy months just to be able to stretch his legs out straight, according to Marcy, because they were so atrophied from being stuck in the closet for so long. The eldest of the 2 sisters wouldn't speak for several years after witnessing the treatment of Deshaun, and the youngest of the 2 siblings apparently wasn't afraid to tell you what she saw and would recount in detail everything she remembered, which Marcy said sent shivers down her spine when she heard some of the things that the children experienced and had gone through in that household with their parents. Marcy is an angel for taking those kids in and attempting to give them the life they deserve with love and care, understanding them where they are and doing what she can to help them cope. Each and every one of the scumbags involved in the heartless murder of this young boy would end up getting arrested. During the investigation, it was determined that Deshaun passed away because his parents refused to give him any food or water, and his manner of death was listed as a homicide. The 28-year-old father, Anthony Martinez, has already been tried and found guilty of 7 different charges, being first-degree murder, 2 counts of harming a young one, 2 counts of kidnapping, and 2 counts of aggravated assault against a police officer. Following his conviction, he would be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the heinous death of his son. In July of 2023, Deshawn's mother, 29-year-old Elizabeth Archibeque, pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and harming a young one, and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole as well. Elizabeth would actually speak during her sentencing hearing, and her words give you the idea that Deshawn's father was the main aggressor in the household towards the boys. Elizabeth would take full responsibility for her actions in this case and say in court, "A huge part of me died along with my beautiful child. Not a day goes by that I do not grieve. I am so sorry." It is stated in several articles that Elizabeth felt powerless in this situation, and Anthony and his mother would also inflict physical and emotional pain on her as well. Plus, she had a tough childhood growing up, which made it even more difficult to break away from this helpless situation and do the right thing for her children. That you went to sleep with your husband knowing your young boys were in a far worse situation than you were, and you ate food knowing they were dying because you wouldn't let them have any. Though she would thank Marcy Roof for giving her children the life they deserved, and she said she had a great sense of relief knowing that her children are in a better place now. 50-year-old Ann Martinez just recently finished up her court proceedings and was sentenced to 20 years in prison for partaking in the end of Deshawn's life. We can only hope that will end up being the rest of her life and she will die in prison, because she does not deserve to see the light of day. What they've done is egregious.
Because I'm a parent and I have kids that are right around your age. And I guarantee you when I put my 2-year-old or a 4-year-old in timeout, if they're in the same room or if they can even see each other, timeout doesn't go like timeout's supposed to go, right? They're making eye contact and they're playing and you're trying to, hey, stop it, you're in timeout, right? What do you do to separate that? How do you fix that? What do you do?
The girls usually know not to look at them in the other way around. They're not separated everyone's. We just have to keep telling them not to look at them and telling the girls not to look at them. And usually it's fine.
So it's hard dealing with 4 kids. It's hard dealing with 4 kids. Like you and I both know that it's obvious what's going on. Does it? What happened? Why don't you feed him enough? What's going on? Did you guys try to...
They have the money.
Have you guys tried doing anything besides food stamps? Did you try going to food banks or Catholic charities or churches or your pediatrician?
I looked stuff up online, but we didn't go to the doctor because I kept turning so.
What do you mean you look things up online?
He would, for like foods that would help Deshawn and stuff. And that's how he found the pediatrician, probably. I don't know.
Do you guys have a home computer?
No, he has a smartphone.
It's just his smartphone? So last week when you made that statement to Anthony, between then and the upcoming 7th, did you think that today that this would be a real possibility, like something like this would happen, that he would die?
No, I thought we'd be able to get him the drink that he needed. And
you thought you'd make it you thought he'd make it those next 2 weeks? Was he acting any different?
No.
Although we don't know a lot about Deshaun Martinez, what we do know is he was certainly an innocent child who wanted nothing but to be loved. He should have been able to grow up alongside his brother and sisters and take on the world with them. It's just another defenseless child stolen from the world by someone who brought them into it. It's beyond devastating that his siblings now have to remember him and what he went through for the rest of their lives. You deserved so much better than this, Deshaun, and I pray you're running free and happy now. Rest in peace to Deshaun Martinez, who was found deceased on March 2nd, 2020.
I'm trying to learn to be okay with it. 'Cause if I can't love me in pieces, gotta feel it, keep healing till the pieces are fixed.
Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's video. If you made it to the end, go down to the comment section and let me know if there's any new cases that you would like me to cover. If you want to, you can follow me on Instagram at Robert Clausen with 2 N's. If you have a story suggestion, DM me on there. I think that's all I have for you guys today. Again, I truly appreciate you. A huge thank you to my Patreon members. I appreciate all your patience and support, and I will see you guys again as soon as I possibly can. Peace.